Several southern leaders have hit out at the continued three-language scheme in the national education policy. They again raised the issue of Hindi chauvinism, but hasn't the new education policy done enough to protect and promote regional languages? Well, joining us now, the DMK MP Kanimozhi. Thank you, Kanimozhi, very much for being with us. You ran into a particular situation which in a sense has triggered this debate once again. When you were at the airport, a CISF person tried to communicate with you. You said, can you speak to me in Tamil or in English? And that person said, are you not an Indian? What exactly happened?
This was at the Chennai airport, and I was coming to Delhi for a committee meeting, and at the security clearance, because of the COVID situation, I think they had some extra instructions, and the person who was posted there, she was giving me instructions in Hindi, and I told her I'm not able to understand what you're saying because I don't know Hindi. Please, can you speak to me in English or in Tamil? Then she continued to speak to me in Hindi. I said, see, I don't understand, and it's not that everybody understands Hindi. Then she said, aren't you Indian? You're Indian, no? So I said, you are nobody to decide who I am, and I'm going to complain about this. Then anyway, I had to leave because it was getting late for the flight, and I left. And before the flight took off, I just tweeted about this. And of course, by the time I landed, some officers from the CISF were there waiting, and they said, this is not our policy, and we're very sorry about what happened.
The other issue, of course, is on the national education policy, and a lot of leaders in the South have their views against it. It continues to promote a three-language policy, but a lot of people believe it does push regional languages as well. Are you dissatisfied with that? Because isn't that what you really wanted to see? Tamil culture, the Tamil language itself being pushed. There seems to be a lot of scope for that.
No, not at all. See, they said in the new education policy that it will be made available to the students if they want to study it in their own mother tongue or local languages till class 5.
Yep.
But then immediately the Kendriya Vidyalaya head said it's not possible. And so they've given, they said, okay, they will be left out of it. And I'm sure there are going to be a large section which does not want to, come under this. And definitely they will be given exemptions. So that is not going. That is not the issue here. The problem is you want to make it a three-language system. In states like Tamil Nadu, we have 2 languages. And why is, when I have gone through the new education policy, why is there so much emphasis on Sanskrit and Hindi, which no other language gets?
All right, so we've heard that in the past as well, a concern in southern states by southern leaders on Hindi and Sanskrit. I'm just going to expand my panel at this stage. Sridhar Reddy Ravula, the BJP spokesperson of Telangana, joins us. Rukmini Banerjee, the CEO of Pratham Education, joins us as well. Mr. Sarvanan, the DMK's spokesperson, joins us, and Yogendra Yadav will be with us in a few moments from now. Mr. Sridhar Reddy Ravula, a lot of people feel that this is a policy that continues to push Hindi and that regional languages need to be allowed in a 2-language context. How do you respond to that? You heard what Kanimozhi had to say.
No, it's a false allegation because the new policy is not going to force any language on any state. Basically, this policy is in the advisory mode, and the 3-language policy will be continued. As far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, they had these apprehensions even in the past. Central government is not in the mood of forcing any kind of language. Instead, it's going to give a greater flexibility for a child to learn in his own mother tongue or the language that prevails in his surrounding areas, or any other language that the state wants to conduct there, or the education system that is actually doing there. So absolutely, these are all apprehensions which the union government is ready to clarify it. So in fact, the student will be exposed. Basically, see, the science says, scientifically proven that in the early stage of the life, up to 8 years, the child will be able to learn things
Is
effectively.
receptive to new languages. That's what the policy actually says.
In his language of instruction, which is mother tongue or the local language.
So I take that point, and I want to go back to Mr. Saravanan, the DMK spokesperson, on this. Why is there such a concern on restricting the number of languages? One understands the importance of ensuring that Tamil is preserved in the case of a lot of people in Tamil Nadu, but why not expose young minds to more languages when your own language is being protected much more than it was in the past?
See, Tamil Nadu historically has been only with this two-language formula, and we have been very successful with that. If you look at the kind of development we have had because of this two-language formula, makes us think that two-language formula is good for us. And when we bring in this component of, see, now they are saying that in the three-language formula, the third language could be any other thing. But earlier it was Hindi. The third language should be only Hindi. So we opposed it. Even now, if you look at when they say that the third language could be any of the other regional languages, where is the infrastructure for teachers in those languages?
But that's for them to sort out. And the policy says it.
Students, 5 students.
That's a valid point, and the policy says that infrastructure needs to be set up. But I'm just trying to understand why the concern about learning Hindi. I understand the point about ensuring the Tamil in your case is preserved. Yeah. This has gone out of the way in trying to preserve it. So therefore, what's wrong with learning Hindi? Or is it again that old official language debate which is a problem? We don't accept Hindi as the official language.
Hindi? Why should we learn Hindi? How is it going to improve our lives? Is it going to improve our lives economically, culturally? In what manner? Can anybody become a doctor, engineer, or any chartered accountant just by studying in Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, or for any other matter, any other regional language? Can they become that? No. Then why should we study it? And Hindi, see, when you bring in the component of Hindi, it makes a class of citizens. There is a majority of the population which knows Hindi, and when somebody else who are not native speakers of Hindi try to speak that language, they cannot compete with the native speakers. So
okay, I just wanted to, okay, fair enough.
It's a class.
Yogendra Yadav, it's that same debate of so-called Hindi chauvinism all over again. I tend to disagree with it in that this is a policy which I think has a lot of very progressive elements, where there is an effort, at least on a piece of paper, to say your languages will be preserved. Efforts will be made to even have regional languages in your state preserved. How they'll do that is a larger issue, but the goal is that. So therefore, where is the question of Hindi versus no Hindi? Why should it be Hindi? Why should it not be Hindi? Or for that matter, any other language?
Sanket, before we say that, let me
Vishnu, but go right ahead. Yeah.
And agree with some of the basic things that DMK spokespersons have said. Number one, this country does not have a national language. Anyone who talks about a national language or wants to impose one is not following the Constitution of India. Number two, Tamil, it so happens, is much older than Hindi, therefore much richer than Hindi. And there is no reason why a language like Tamil should be made subservient to Hindi. Number three, the fact that there is a two-language formula in Tamil Nadu, the reality is that most of the North India also has had two-language formula.
True.
I wish he had said it more bluntly. The blunt truth is that three-language formula was sabotaged in North India, not in Tamil Nadu. And it was sabotaged in the three-language formula of 1960s clearly said in so many words that Hindi would be taught in non-Hindi states, but Hindi states will learn a language of India other than Hindi, preferably from South India. If Tamil was taught in Uttar Pradesh for the last 50 years, if Telugu was taught in Haryana for the last 40 years, I'm sure my friend Kanimuni, my friends from DMK, would not object to Hindi being taught.
Right.
So I think the fraudulence and the sabotaging of third three-language formula started in North India. To my mind, three-language formula is a very good formula, but let this time the initiative come from North India. I really feel, Sanket,
Okay.
for all the debate that has been generated, unfortunately, this is going to be one more completely wasted debate. And I can tell you, not one thing is going to change as a result of this policy. It's a good policy.
Yeah.
It makes very
Implementation
good
might be difficult.
Nothing is going to happen.
Rukmini
Sandra,
Banerjee,
can you-
I'm more
Sandra,
optimistic
can
than
you just
Yogendra
read
Yadav, I
that
must
again?
confess. I hope it works, because I do believe that children between the ages of 2 and 8, as you mentioned, and as this policy mentions, are receptive to new languages. Can there be anything more magnificent than children and young minds being exposed to language? As a nation, should we not actually want that and move away from Hindi versus Tamil versus English and your region versus my region? Language is learning, it's communicating, right? Isn't that an ideal we should strive for?
I want to just step in here to say that we need to think about this as a new opportunity. The language debate tends to overtake everything else about the national education policy. But I'd like to remind everyone that one piece of this policy is to talk about the continuum between age 3 and age 8. At that age, it is really important that whatever goes on between the child and the instructor or the teacher is done in a language that the child understands and is comfortable with. And that, I myself am from Bihar. For most children, Hindi is a second language, which you learn once you're in school. So I think that this whole thing needs to be seen from the point of view of children, from the point of view of laying a very strong foundation for learning. And therefore, the first thing that you need to start in is to speak in the language that the child understands.
Right.
So I've often been saying that the real language that needs to be used in the younger grades is the playground language. That's the
Correct.
language that children speak to each
And
other.
if you can
And-
call it the local language or the home language or the
and
playground
pick it up from
language,
there.
sure.
Yeah. And one very important requirement is that teachers who deal with our children at very young ages should be very comfortable in communicating with children and their parents in the language that at that point is the most common. And then you can build up from there
Sure.
into many other things that need to be done.
Well, I'd like to thank all of
Yeah.
you very much for joining
Sir.
us. I'm sorry, I'm just completely out of time. It's about almost going to be 10 o'clock. I do apologize for that. It's a fascinating debate. Will we ever go beyond our concerns about region and language to actually embracing language in the way that we all want to embrace it, I'm sure. But as Yogendra ji mentioned, there are concerns in the manner in which it's been done in the past. I'd like to thank all of you. Time for us to take this short break.